You're listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series.
Welcome to the studio, welcome to the microphone, Supreme Court Judge David Ashton Lewis.
Oh, Colin, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to receive your welcome every Thursday. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Always a pleasure to receive your input. And I thank the lady who wrote in the question that we will endeavour to give some answer to today.
Look, we've combined about 3 or 4 people who've emailed in their question just for the fact that it's roughly around the same topic, but it will allow us to expand into the topic that we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
So I'd like to thank Margaret, I'd like to thank John, and I'd like to thank Bill for their input.
Right.
And the question was specifically, and I'm paraphrasing now because
read it out. It's not very long.
I would appreciate a talk regarding passports, especially the granting of passports to people of doubtful associations, i.e. ISIS. I'm hearing passports must be given to Australian citizens overseas, no matter what their circumstances are, wishing to come home. Now, the other 2 questions were around the same sort of value, other than they expanded it into what does it mean to be a citizen? Where are those rights guaranteed? And is that exactly correct that no matter who and what you are, if you're an Australian citizen, if you want a passport to come home, you have a right to have one? Yep. So, David, I thought we might start off with what is an Australian citizen as opposed to just someone who comes here and works here, and where are those rights detailed and where are they guaranteed?
Okay, the rights of Australia. Look, Australian citizenship is, we'll get into the rights side of it, but Australian citizenship is eligible for anyone born in Australia of Australian-born parents. So not necessarily that your parents came from overseas, but you were born in Australia. No, it has to be Australian-born of Australian parents. Might be naturalised citizens. That's the first thing. The rights of citizenship are true. Every Australian, you, Colin, have a right as a citizen to a passport. I have a right to a passport, but a right is not exclusive in itself, such as you're born and all of a sudden a passport is issued to you. You have to apply for an Australian passport, and that leaves open the governing authorities to say, well, we're not going to give you one, or we are going to give you one. So while you have a right to an Australian passport and a right to citizenship, you have to exercise a clear step of applying for it, applying for a passport. And if you're not born, like you were born in Australia,
I was.
So you didn't have to apply for Australian citizenship, yet you had to apply for a passport. It wasn't given to you automatically. So I think it's important to bear in mind the differentiation between Australian passport and Australian citizenship. You have to be an Australian citizen and apply for an Australian passport. It's not automatically granted. Now, as I just touched on, I hope I'm not repeating myself, you are an Australian citizen either by birth or by application which has been granted.
So the next question is, where are those? We don't have a Bill of Rights, just like America does. Where are those rights as a citizen laid out?
They're laid out in 1,000 years of English common law, and it's called the Common Law of Australia, which it was on the creation of the Commonwealth on January the 1st, 1901. Every one of the 1,000 or the 900 years of English common law became the common law of the Commonwealth of Australia. And then from January the 1st, 1901, they've added 126 years of the development and application of that law in Australian courts by Australian judges. So our rights are laid out in 100. Well, I better correct myself. In 926 years of common law. The first 900 of that English.
So we adopted the English rules and regulations
We
or
did.
law.
Yes.
And then post us adopting that, we have all the laws and that we have created ourselves.
You're 100% correct, and I repeat, and I don't mean this meanly or racially or biasly, but thank God we never took on 900 years of Middle Eastern Sharia law or African law, because you can look into it and see, whoops, it's very different. So we are, yes, you asked the question.
So the next question is, David, that being that we have people who just come to Australia and they might have a work visa, but they avail themselves of all of the wonderful freedoms or the wonderful offerings that we as citizens receive naturally. Healthcare.
Yes.
We receive that.
Yep.
Now, the question was posed, shouldn't that just be for citizens of Australia? And for those people who have not yet become a citizen, it is a draw card to become a citizen.
I think if someone is granted, I think there's merit in that question. If you're a employment visa holder, a temporary resident visa, you could be told, no, sorry, you're not a citizen. Now, it's different with permanent residents, because those are people who have passed certain steps and have been held to be, you are ready to be made. You just got to serve some more time or whatever. But we are a civilized nation, and so
You've said that many times, David. I love this. We're a civilized nation, so we just give everything away for free.
Well, and you're not wrong in that. There is, and we're going to come to the ISIS brides shortly. We don't give everything away free, but we do extend certain rights to a temporary resident visa, an employment resident visa, and I'm not against anyone who's got any visa being able to access, because they're usually working, they're paying tax.
Correct.
And having access to our health system and whatever.
Look, as we've found out throughout all of this, that it is nothing's very black and white, or it is a tick in the box and things are done. People call for, we need to stop immigration. Well, we underpin a great many things in this country on the immigration, paying down our debt, picking our fruits and veggies on farms.
Yes.
A lot of our universities rise and fall on overseas students being educated in their institutions. So when you say, hey, we need to turn all of this off to solve the housing crisis, well, you've got a number of other problems waiting in the wings that you're going to end up having to deal with, just as you do here. Now, yep, they come out. People come out. They work in our society. They pay taxes. They contribute. They aren't a citizen as such,
right,
but they still participate as if they are. So what you can sort of see now when you get a question like this, what is the real difference between someone who does all of this over here and someone who's taken the next step and said, no, I'd like to join the crowd and become a citizen? Is there a distinctive difference between the two?
Yes, there is, because you can't be deported from this country. I can't be.
Sure.
I can be jailed if I do wrong, if I break laws, but no one can remove me from this country. But if I'm, again, one of those people who have not attained citizenship, our government can say, sorry, you're going away.
You're not welcome here.
You're not welcome here, and send them away. Now, that has been blurred quite badly since the Second World War, because, again, of a sense of justice, a sense of kindness, and what can be rudely termed a bleeding heart mentality. And that really, I think, when we get to these ISIS brides, that's been put into huge relief. And so you come, you contribute, whether you're a citizen or a non-citizen, and you pay tax, you're entitled to certain aspects that Colin Balevsky's entitled to, David Ashton Lewis is. But there's something that until they become citizens, they're not entitled to, and that is the value of Australian citizenship. So for all the taxes they may have paid, if a decision is made, deport them, then they go. Whereas you can't be deported anywhere. I can't be deported anywhere.
So it's a big difference since we saw the term Romus Citanus, or I've heard a citizen of Rome.
Oh, yes. Civitatis Romana.
That's the one.
Yes.
Right, a citizen of Rome, where
Yeah.
you know what, a third of the population were slaves, and you worked your little bottom off to hopefully become one somewhere down the track.
You may you see it for where our listeners, I think, are predominantly Christian, and Paul, the Apostle Paul, claimed his Roman citizenship to, one, get him out of jail, and two, save his life.
Yes.
When he told his jailers, Romans, "Oh, I'm a citizen of Rome," everyone said, "Whoops," and they let him out of jail. So being a citizen of the Commonwealth of Australia is a great privilege, either by birth or by making, and it offers great protection.
So now let's move on to the question of that was posed re passports.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right that you have to apply to obtain a passport, and there would be a number of criteria of which we're not going to go into
No, we
today.
won't today.
But I'm sure looking at your criminal history will be one of them.
Yeah, of course it is. And how many people, I always used to chuckle for years flying back into Australia, and it would say, "Are you a member of any terrorist organisation or like such as the Communist Party?" Well, that wasn't a
Terrorist.
Yeah, that wasn't a terrorist.
How long ago was that, David?
Oh, 25 years ago. Or the Nazi Party. And could
dear.
you see anyone saying, "Oh, yes, I'm a paid-up, cashed-up member
that's right.
of the Australian Nazi Party"? So, but still going into the US, you ask those questions. Now, again, no one in their right mind is going to say yes. So what does that highlight? That highlights that a government, an independent, sovereign government can say to someone, one, you're not entering, right? And two, even if you're a citizen and have the right to enter, they can say, no, we're not letting you in. And that brings on the big question that will relate to ISIS brides, that any government, well, certainly any Western democratic government, has the right, whether it will exercise it, to, you're born in Australia, your mother was born in Australia. Your father was a member of the Nazi Party. No, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
I'm being a liar.
No, he
But
wasn't.
your father was German-Polish.
Yeah, sure.
And he emigrated to Australia after the war.
Always found that one funny because the border's moved so many
Oh,
times
yes.
over those years. You could be
It has.
Polish one minute,
Oh, it has.
then the Germans
He's
come through the
German
back,
the next. Yes.
back through the back fence,
So,
and now you're
but
German.
He came to the country legally after the war, and he worked, and he obviously met your mother. They became fond and then in love with each other and married, and you were born. So you're an Australian citizen by birth, but any government has the right, if it deems you as not worthy of it, and any of the listeners here can have their Australian citizenship withdrawn and their passports cancelled. I could have mine withdrawn, and people would say, no, no, no. And I would say, yes, 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 because our parliament and our government is sovereign. It answers to nobody. Now, even if it signs...
Define that word, David.
I will.
Yep.
If it signs an international treaty where it joins us to something made either in Geneva or France or wherever, and then it becomes law of Australia. But that same government or another government can say, no, no, we're stepping out of this. So any government could come to me and say, if I fly out of the country, we're cancelling your Australian passport. so I can't get back in. Or, so I think it's just important that people bear in mind when a government is sovereign, and I will define that in a minute, it can basically do whatever it wants.
Okay, so that's the definition of sovereign. Do what you like.
Definition of sovereign is, in much nicer words, that if a body is sovereign, it can make its own laws, it can withdraw its own laws, and it is not responsible to anyone else to make its laws. Now, we've had shows in the past on Australia becoming free from Great Britain, and we've had some rather strange people saying that we're not an independent nation because we are bound by English law. Well, we're not.
No.
And from 1931, Australia, the Commonwealth, was not bound by any English law. And then from 1973, from memory, each of the states of Australia were not bound by any law from the United Kingdom. So it means we answer to no one but ourselves.
Nice. Okay, well, and we've heard people claim that they're sovereign citizens, but,
And that, well, let's look just quickly. And that meant that Desi Freeman, sadly, who lost his life, he claimed that he answered to no one but himself. And that's why when he committed certain offences and was placed before magistrates, he quite openly said, I don't recognise your jurisdiction or your authority over me.
Well, that's great. You're going to have it applied to you anyway.
Yeah, and that was the answer. Well, yes, you may not recognise it, but we recognise it, and we will treat you as if you are bound.
All right. Now let's just go back to the
Yes.
ISIS brides question. And Margaret, forgive me, it is just an open look at your question. And we're looking at it from the point of view that maybe you married a gentleman, or I married someone who became a serial killer. We didn't see it happening. We didn't decide to do it together, but it just happened. I'm forever labelled the husband of a serial killer, or you're labelled the wife of a serial killer. But do you have any culpability here? And that's probably the bigger question here when we hear the words ISIS brides. They married people who fought for ISIS. Okay. Did they support them actively? Did they sit there and load their guns for them? Did they actually do any of those sort of things other than bear children? That's the question before the government, I would imagine, and the courts in some cases. And that's what we need to bear in mind when looking at this.
Okay. Let's look at the situation that those ISIS brides, those Muslim women, were lawfully married to their husbands. Their husbands believed in the cause of the Islamic State. Their husbands left Australia and involved in murderous activity overseas. And those wives had gone with them because they loved their husbands or believed for tradition it's my duty to support. So we'll deal with the husband first. He's an Australian citizen either by birth or by grant of citizenship. He goes and he fights for a body called ISIS, which was prescribed or held by the Australian government to be an unlawful, violent terrorist organisation. He went and joined it. That would be enough to have the Australian government say to him, you've lost your Australian citizenship and you've lost your passport.
Nice.
You might have a nice little piece of paper there, booklet, but it's not recognised and we will not let you back into the Commonwealth of Australia. So you have lost your citizenship. Then the wives. Now, all of these men, I understand, of the 30-odd women, all their husbands and that were killed. So those women say, I'm an Australian and I want to come home. Well, as Australian citizens, they are entitled to come home and entitled to re-enter the Commonwealth of Australia, unless the Australian government says, we have evidence that you loaded guns for him or you chopped heads off and helped him do that. That wife is dead in the water. But there's no evidence. I think there's some evidence of holding slaves. But let's put that aside for the minute. Provided the woman has done nothing more than go to wherever she went and stayed and was his wife, she's committed no crime. She has just joined her husband overseas. She's entitled to come back and re-enter. Now, but the Australian government is also entitled to say, we now treat your support, even if it was loving support, of a criminal, a war criminal, we will now not let you re-enter the Commonwealth of Australia. Australian government could do that and it chose not to.
I think the point you're trying to make, David, is that the discretion is with the Australian government, but if queried, they have to have a damn good reason to deny your passport, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I mean, again, if you're an Australian citizen, you have a right to a passport, but you have to apply.
That's right.
And it's in the application process that a decision maker can say, no, sorry, we don't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So those women had a right because I think
they're Australian citizens.
Look, the answer in short should have been, or could be, the Australian government says, we've withdrawn your right to Australian citizenship and thus your passport. You will not be allowed to re-enter the Commonwealth of Australia. Now, governments have that right. And I hear people saying, oh, they're Australian passport holders. No one could stop. I heard Tony Burke saying
Yeah, I heard something
the
like
minister.
that,
and I felt like standing up and saying, who's advising you, Mr. Burke? You are a sovereign government. You can do whatever you want, provided it doesn't break obligations we have signed under international treaties, and even then we could say, but that's not binding law unless it's been made law by the Australian Parliament. But even a law, look, a government has a right to withdraw, to abuse, to not accept any law, any Australian law.
Sure.
They may not last in power for too long, but they can say, we are the government. So those brides, if I keep it as simple as I can, the Australian government should have said to them, unfortunately, ladies, you have involved yourself just through love and support in this dreadful organisation. We will not let you back.
And the bit that I love is, and I always love to remind the listeners, is that this is the basic preface. We put the government in power to manage the country on our behalf, or the state, or if it's a council, the area, on our behalf. And therefore, if we're very unhappy with something that's going on, we should march to our local delegate and say we are so very unhappy, because if one person comes up and says, I don't like this, if 10,000 people turn up and say they don't like this, well, you know what? I'm pretty sure the politicians will act.
Well, here I come back to our statement. We are a civilised nation, and everything you've just said is correct constitutionally. And we can say to a government, we're so unhappy with what you've done, you're not being re-elected. Because we tend to wait for every 3 years. But the power of people, and in this country, never so happened, is the people say, no, we're not waiting for another 18 months. You've been in power 18 months. We want you gone. And if there was 1 million, 2 million people demanding the immediate resignation of the current government, or marching and just throwing them out, which they can do physically. But luckily, we are balanced. And so usually it happens every 3 years at the polls.
David, just a couple of moments left. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think it's important that people understand, as we are a sovereign nation, if I put it in the blunt way, we can do whatever we jolly well want to do. We can make laws that they can be challenged under the Constitution if they're uncivilised. Like we're going to behead children. Well, we can't do that.
We can't do that.
But bear in mind, a government can do whatever it chooses to do, and this is where your point comes in, as long as they have the
Man
backing
of the people.
Of the people.
And look at a good example, or an example. I won't say it's a good example. Is President Donald Trump?
Well, there you are.
I can put in tariffs. I can do this. I can say this today. Tomorrow I'm going to say this. It's completely opposite.
The only thing that can stop him
Yes.
is if he's breached the Constitution
Sure.
of the United States. But that's a good example. I mean, I hear people who hate Donald Trump. Well, you have to say to them, you might hate him, but unless the people
He was voted in by a majority.
voted in, well, yeah, they've got to get rid of this electoral college. This is the problem in the US, but that's a topic for
Another show.
day, yeah.
All right, David Ashton Lewis, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Colin.
You've been listening to 4CRB's interviews and talkback series. Support local online content and become a financial supporter today at 4crb.com.